think this is one of my favorite shots so far. I love it. Usually I'm over there. Talk about putting yourself up on a pedestal. That's kind of what it feels like, sitting on this little mound here. All right. Blessings, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Today I wanted to talk on how to feel, because it's something that I've just been learning in the last 6 months. And I've done lots of therapy and studied dozens of healing modalities. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Maybe a dozen healing modalities. And simply being able to feel our feelings is one of the deepest medicines that I've experienced, and it's so simple. And I feel almost a little frustrated that it's like why wasn't I ever told this, right? Or why wasn't this ever expressed to me? So, and if you've done my meditations in this series, then you've done this, right? You go inside the body and you feel. So let's break it down. When we get triggered, we have, generally for most people, the first thing that happens is then they begin to write a story about that feeling or that emotion, and they start thinking about it. And so that's not feeling your feelings, that's thinking your feelings. But to just go inside the body and feel the visceral sensation. Does my chest feel tight? Do I have tension in my throat? Do I have a lump in my stomach? Like, where does the feeling actually show up physically, right? So I think when I had heard this before, I'm like, well, how do you feel your feelings? But it's literally like feeling the body, right? What are the sensation of feeling, the sense of feeling? Where is this emotion showing up? And simply going to that place and noticing. And then there's this next step of just allowing that feeling to be there. Recognizing that whatever is experiencing in the body, that's how it's processing this stimulus, this trigger. That's when your mind starts to want to jump in. And again, put stories to the feeling, put thoughts and judgments and interpretations. So then that's the next step then is go back inside the feeling, right? The mind wants to pull us out because that's what we've been conditioned. We're up against 400 years of Cartesian thought of I think, therefore I am. And so we've put this immense emphasis on thinking and on interpreting things through the mind, which there is value in that. The mind is great at weighing pros and cons and analyzing things, but the mind is not great at experiencing feelings. Especially when you'll notice when it's your survivor self sort of hijacking the experience and bringing these emotions up into the mind, that the feeling doesn't actually complete. It just keeps cycling around because we didn't take the time to go inside the body and experience it. So let's work with that. I'll just say if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I'm happy to answer questions or to offer tools and practices. It's something that I feel really passionate about. And especially through my own journey of doing all of these different healing modalities for the last, 14 years, 15 years, that it's like, sometimes the most simple practices are the most effective. There are different seasons at different parts of your life. Sometimes we do need things that are a little more profound or spiritual or that engage the mind or the survivor self long enough for surrender to happen. But for myself, what I find is I keep leaning more and more into simplicity. Healing doesn't have to be this really complicated process. It's about showing up continuously and making yourself available for the process of healing. It's not about control. It's not about figuring things out. It's not even about knowing what to do. It's simply making yourself available and listening to your being, listening to the heart, listening to the body, listening to the mind. What part of you is crying out for love, and how do you still yourself long enough to hear that need so that you can fulfill it? Oftentimes we're jumping from story to story to story that we don't have the chance to just feel and to be with our sensations and feelings long enough to find out what the need is. But the first step is to feel. So let's work with that today. So closing your eyes, bringing your awareness inside, softening your expectation, softening your judgment. And if the mind feels particularly active, you could feel the pulse or the breath or both. Slowing down to greet this moment. The body is the gateway into the present. Getting inside of your senses. Where does this moment show up inside your body? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel sensation in your back or your throat, your face? Just track. As I feel in this moment, where is it? And to engage the mind, we can name it. Saying inside the body or saying out loud, I feel this sensation in my wherever. And then begin to notice, get a little more detailed, naming to yourself, does this feeling have a texture? There are so many beautiful words in the English language for all of the different textures that we often don't get to use. And so when we tune into it, you'll notice most of the time this feeling inside the body has a texture. Sometimes it's sharp or pointy, maybe it's bumpy or ribbed, or maybe it's rough, maybe it's smooth, maybe it's fluffy. Just be with the sensation, notice it. You'll notice the mind wants to start to hijack this process. So we keep the mind engaged. Does this feeling have a shape? What is the structure of this feeling? Does it feel like a ribbon or a ball or a blob? There's so many different ways that it can feel inside the body. Stay with it. Keep observing it. Maybe noticing if there's a color. You don't have to think about it too hard. Just notice, does it have a color? And just see what color comes in. Don't worry about whether you're making up answers. What's important here is that we're staying with the sensation and the feeling in the body. Noticing if this sensation is still or moving. Is it still? Is it stagnant? Is it growing and then getting smaller? Is it wiggling? Just notice. And does it have edges? Does it have a beginning and an end? Or is it just blurred into the rest of your body? There's no right or wrong answer here, simply staying with the sensation. And as you notice it, what happens next? Is it still in the same part of the body? is it somewhere else? And tracking any change. So if it moved, what is the texture of this new sensation in this new part of the body? If it's in the same place, just keep tracking it, noticing. Did the texture, the shape change? Did the color change? Is it still or is it moving? What's the shape? Does it have edges? Continuously naming to yourself, either out loud or silently. Staying inside the body. Because the body is the gateway into the present, you may notice that a lot of time can go by as you track these feelings. Stay with it. We'll go about 1 more minute. Stay with the sensation. As you observe it, what do you notice now? What part of the body is showing up? Part of you is crying out for love. No story needed. Nothing to change or become. Simply allow. Let it be there. Let the sensation be seen. Does it have a shape? Does it have a color? What's the texture of this sensation? Is it still or is it moving? Just answering these questions to yourself. Does it have edges? Does it have a beginning and an end? What do you notice now? And slowly and gently opening the eyes up, coming back to your environment, whether you're inside or outside, finding something resourcing to look at, something that you enjoy looking at. Gently returning to the screen. Thank you all. Thank you all so very much for being here and for feeling with me. So very grateful for you and this work that you do in the world. Many blessings.